Well, hey, good morning, and welcome back. It's Dan MacDonald. You're listening to the Dan MacDonald Show on AM800 CKLW. And it's funny. I was asking people about what they do to help them sleep, and I got some good texts in here. I got some people saying warm milk, a glass of wine before bed, weighted blanket, which I really want to try, pink noise. Yes, I'm a white noise kind of guy, but pink noise, I'll give it a shot. But I love these. I love these sleep suggestions going on. I mentioned that last night, because I had a heck of a time getting to sleep, Sunday night. Last night I had a little cup of tea that I bought from the Cannabis store, one of the cannabis shops here in Windsor, and it was kind of an indica base. And I know word is kind of back and forth on what indica sativas do to you, but indica is kind of generally known as a relaxing. So I got this little tea with chamomile and lavender, and I know both of those have relaxing properties in them, and it's infused with indica dominant strain of cannabis, which is supposed to relax you, calm you down, and, say what you want. I slept like a log last night. I did. I have no shame. Someone said, why do you admit this? It's no different than me saying I had a glass of wine to calm down before bed. Alcohol is what it is too. If you want to call it a drug, call it a drug, but it's the same thing. In fact, I think there's less an effect from the little cup of tea that I have. I just got a bit sleepy last night. That was it. Sleepy, and I slept like a log. That was it. Maybe wine does it for you too. They're both legal. There's nothing wrong with it. But Colorado just passed a slew of groundbreaking drug reform laws. And I've always looked to Colorado just to kind of see what they're doing when they legalized recreational cannabis use back a couple years back. I think it was 2014, 15. I could be wrong on that. I kind of thought, wow, let's watch and see how they do it and see if that's what's going to be coming here in Ontario. And here we are. It's legalized. But Wednesday, Colorado became the first state to officially establish a framework for marijuana social consumption spaces. In addition, the state legalized weed delivery services and permitted public investments into Colorado's cannabis companies, which was previously banned. So big movements, movements there. And I've always thought, once we legalize recreational cannabis here in Windsor, we'd have all these lovely consumption spaces and venues to go to watch concerts, and maybe no alcohol there, but you could bring your own, maybe even ideally buy your own, like Higher Limits. And that's who we're talking to right now. A former owner of Higher Limits, which was a consumption site, Jon Liedtke on the phone. Hey, John, good morning.
Morning, Dan. Thanks for having me on. Glad you got a good sleep.
I did. It worked like a charm for me. I'm a big fan of that. So Colorado, and like I said, I kind of always looked to Colorado, especially when they legalized it back when I think it was 2014 or 2015. I thought, wow, okay, let's watch them and see if the sky falls. Of course, it didn't, and then we unfolded. But your thoughts on consumption spaces? I know they're going to allow social consumption spaces in Colorado, and you used to own one. Just your thoughts on their legalization.
I think it's great that they're moving forward with these consumption venues. They legalized, as you said, in 2014. So, 6-7 years ago now, they're looking to having a full actual program for consumption spaces. They actually had 2 that were allowed only in the capital limits in Denver. Right. But now this is a statewide program, and it's going to be really great to see, how it rolls out, pardon the pun, or rolls in rather. I think that you're going to see the potential for, obviously a lot of business cases here. But then beyond that, I think you might see some of the, cleaning up of what Mayor Dilkins referred to as the riffraff and as the undesirables. Seeing people that you don't necessarily want to see consuming cannabis on your city streets, just like you wouldn't necessarily want to see people pounding back alcohol walking down city streets, right? We all have our sensibilities. And I think what this is going to allow to do is, give people a place that they want to go to. And again, at Higher Limits, we saw very clearly over a 3-year period, upwards of 100,000 customers over that time. People want to come to these spaces, whether it be just for the social atmosphere, whether it's because they can't legally consume it at home because they live in an apartment or a condo that prohibits it, or they have children. They don't want to consume it in front of people. Or, if we're doing shows or something, as you brought up, music or bringing in comedians. So it's a great opportunity, especially now post-COVID. Once we all have our vaccines in us, I think people are going to want to be getting out, getting social, getting into their communities. And what better way to do it than in a way that's safe, that's regulated, and without having to worry about, for example, the ills that come with alcohol.
Absolutely, everything you said completely. No, your space got shut down because of the Smoke Free Ontario Act, I believe. Which, I mean, I know we've talked about this before on the air, but devastating, very disappointing. Do you think something like this has a shot at coming back here in Ontario, here in Windsor?
Yeah, I do. So earlier last year, the province of Ontario, before COVID, had launched consultations. I believe we spoke about it, but whether or not the province should allow for cannabis consumption on site. Now, they weren't going to break the Smoke Free Ontario Act, so the plan was always just for edibles as the starting point. And that's what Colorado is looking at. They're not going to allow for people to light up a joint, but they will allow for people to, use extracts or vaporizers. So that's a bit of a difference than what we have here. But I can tell you, Dan, since the last time we've spoken, I've been a lot more impressed with the edibles game up here in Canada. I've never been a fan of edibles, probably because, it was always from someone who handed me something and told me, hey, this is what's in it. Good luck. And I've never really liked what the outcome was. My tolerance has been all over the place. But with these regulated doses down at that 2.5 or 2 milligram range, and some of the edibles up to 10 milligrams per drink, you can really allow for that dosage. And whereas I thought it was going to be a big concern at the outset of people getting, far too high, for lack of a better term, at these spaces, I really think that the going low and going slow will work for it. It's going to be different, of course. We're going to have to figure out how the smart serve comes into play with something like this. It's going to be far more regulated here in Ontario. I do trust and believe that. But I think the opportunity here for someone who wants to open something in a regulated space, provide an opportunity for people who it doesn't exist right now is, I think it's going to be there. And I think we need to continue to push for it, because the province said that while there was some large feedback about it, they're not ready to start to push for any changes. So I would be recommending to anyone in this industry or community who wants to see something like this, now is the time to start making some noise. We can point to other jurisdictions that are doing it. We know that Las Vegas has just allowed this. We know that West Hollywood has just allowed this. We have already had this here in Ontario. It's time to take back our place with it. And quite frankly, as I said, it's time that once we get post-COVID, let's just start having some fun again. We all need to have a bit of fun.
Yeah, I'm with you so much on that. And I remember going to Higher Limits, and I was so impressed with the vibe, how friendly it was, how chill it was. It was phenomenal. Did you ever have a bad experience with a guest or a customer there, John, where it was something like somebody was trying to sell drugs? And I'll be honest, this is part of the stigma, which I no longer carry either. I was a little bit nervous to go in, thinking, am I going to walk into a drug den here, with dealers leering at me from the corner and people swinging from the chandeliers? And clearly, it was absolutely not that. Did you ever have a bad experience with people at Higher Limits when it was operating?
We made a very big, the short answer is no. We had a very strong point of informing everyone of our rules when they came in. No dealing, no selling, no trading, no swapping. You'd be removed on first instance of that. Second instance, you'd be banned from coming back in. Everybody had a strong respect for what was going on inside those four walls. They wanted to see it continue because they felt as if they had a bit of an ownership over the place. They didn't want it to disappear, so there was that respect there. But if you're asking, was there ever an incident inside Higher Limits? Of course there was. I mean, we had one instance where we had a group of drunk patrons from a bar down the street come trampling up the stairs and wanting to come in, and we had to ask for some security from downstairs to come and assist with removing them, because we didn't allow for anyone who consumed alcohol to excess to be on site. That wasn't something that we wanted. Then the only other instance that we ever had on site was a homeless person came in and stole one of our charity change jars that we had. We were collecting some food for the homeless. So all that to say, over 3 years and 100,000 people through the doors, we had two instances, and the police really liked us. We provided a place for people to go to that was regulated. It was safe. The police knew that they could count on it to be what it was, what we were saying it was. It wasn't a hot spot that they had to pay attention to. And I think that communities really should start to look to this as a new model post-COVID for a way to get that economic activity roaring again, for a way to get people back into your cores. There's a great spin-off effect. Of course, if someone's at Higher Limits, odds are they're probably going to go to the fry shop across the street and get a poutine or maybe a slice of pizza or something. There's great synergies here. And I think if we want to, really see our economy come roaring back, this is a great way to do that. It can create jobs. It can create sales. It can just create an atmosphere that's regulated and safe.
Yeah, I remember thinking, when I was at Higher Limits, thinking, God, I can't wait till everything is absolutely legalized. The places like this are going to be booming. Now, how much though? How much in the way is the Smoke Free Ontario Act? Because I'm not a cigarette smoker. I don't like smoke either. How much does that kind of prevent? Is there a way of getting around that to open up places like Higher Limits again?
Yeah, it's the biggest impetus, right? Our bread and butter, if you will, was people combusting, people vaporizing, people dabbing their concentrates. And none of that's allowed under the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. So the only thing that would be allowed, even with these proposed regulatory changes, would be for edible consumption and sale. Now, mind you, edibles lounges are legal today. If I wanted to open up an edibles lounge, I could, but it would just be a bring-your-own space. Right. Which, again, the business model doesn't work anymore. Why are you really aiming to do something like that? It's by allowing the sale and the on-site consumption combined. That's where you really get into that sweet spot of being able to really position yourself as a hospitality service. And that's what I like about what they're doing in Colorado. They are very clear. They called this the marijuana hospitality bill. And I think that's the type of attitude that you need to have in it. If we keep focusing on it, and I'm not trying to, rag on our own system here, but if we keep focusing on it as the Canadian way or the Ontario way, which is we're reluctantly legalizing this substance, it's not good for you, even though there's nothing that really says that it's not good for you. We don't want you to be consuming it, even though you're legally able to consume it. And if I'm a politician, I'm going to speak against it, even though, I still want your votes in one form or another. We can't be surprised that, cannabis normalization is taking longer than we want. And we can't be surprised to see other jurisdictions fly past us, implementing things that we've already had, that we've gotten rid of, that we quite frankly should be bringing back. So we can choose to fall to the back of this race and lose it, or we can choose to try to, really try to pick up our speed and get going. This is Ontario. This is Canada. I predict that we'll probably end up right around that midway point.
We can hope. Now, you said now's the time to make some noise. I completely agree, especially with other places in the U.S. kind of rolling out, there's that pun again, consumption spaces. What should we do if we wanted to make some noise and say, come on, can we do what they're doing? Who do we write to? How do we make that noise?
Right now, I make noise to every level. I mean, speaking with the federal government isn't really that applicable here right now. So reach out to your city councilors, reach out to your MPPs, reach out to the Ministry of the Attorney General to provide there's no official submission right now. So it's just be a citizen, make your noise, talk about how Colorado's doing this, why aren't we doing this? If you live here in Windsor West where you had higher limits, reach out to your city councilor, Reno Borland, reach out to MPs, reach out to even your MP for that matter. Make some noise, because without making noise, there won't be a conversation, and it'll be easy for the government to not make any moves on this. But if you're making noise, if you're causing a stink, if you're making it difficult for your elected officials to get through their weeks without hearing about cannabis lounges, they might be more inclined to actually make that noise stop and to bring it about.
Jon Liedtke, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me, Dan, and thanks for what you do for cannabis normalization.